Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 3 Star Lounge YouTube channel. This is the companion to the 3 Star Lounge podcast, link in the description below. In here, we're going to have more general discussion on topics, think pieces, lists, things like that. And just to separate them from the more narrative focused fare we have over on the podcast. And today, I want to talk to you guys about something. I've been thinking about arcade games and about how they've changed over the years, how arcade games have grown since the days of the arcade cabinet. And I feel as though the successor to the arcade game, the natural evolution of those games, is not the genre that one would think. Because when you hear a question like that, I'm sure a lot of you answer that question with something like a bullet hell or a platformer or some kind of two-player or multiplayer game that is couch co-op, and those are all fantastic choices. But the true answer to this question, I believe, is the roguelite. And if you give me just a moment, I will explain, and maybe you will be on side as well. So, the thing with arcade games is they were easy to pick up. They were probably difficult to master depending on the game. Certainly fun to play, and they were addicting. They were made to keep you coming back for more. And modern arcade games give you all the same things with improvements because it's been years. Arcade games have been around for longer than I've been alive. So naturally there are improvements on the genre. Things are smoother, they look better. And if we were to move some of the games we have today over into the arcade cabinet space, they would certainly feel right at home and they would kill a lot of quarters. Nidhogg would kill a lot of quarters. Games like Towerfall would kill a lot of quarters. Games like Broforce for sure would kill a lot of quarters. And those are great things. These are all good games. But we are not talking about those. And there's a reason for that. And the main reason is the predictability of it. Arcade games suffer from one thing. One thing that all arcade games suffer. The levels are generally the same. And even if they're tough, even if it's hard, there are general tips and tricks and things you can learn from repeated play that helps you get through the game faster because generally you would have to start from the beginning. So the games are designed in a way that if you're experienced, you're able to get through them faster, either by just generally having mastery of the systems or you know secret passages or other tips and tricks and crazy things that you only know because you've been playing the game for extended periods of time. Now, that very thing still holds true today with any of the modern day arcade game counterparts that you like. You're going to learn some things and you're going to be better at the game because you've simply been playing it longer. And if there are secret passageways or just simply better routes, you'll know those. And all this yip yap yada yada yada. You basically become a sage and it's awesome. But that's not what we're talking about. So let's shift the conversation over to the roguelites. You can pick anyone you like. Enter the Gungeon, Hades, Binding of Isaac, Rogue Legacy, doesn't matter. Pick your favorite one and just think about the journey with that game that you have. And if you never played a game like this, I'll explain for you. When you start off, you're certainly going to be bad and you're going to be dying a lot, but each time you play and you restart, you're going to be learning and getting better, just like the arcade games of the past. And most roguelites have some kind of quick restart feature that gets you right back in the action, and it doesn't leave you the time to dwell on a death that most single player experiences would have you have, because it's kind of a bigger deal when you die in single player games and other genres because you're usually the hero or the guy. And that's not to say that that's not true in roguelites. It's just more so that you're expected to die, and generally within the story, you dying isn't as big of a deal. It's more of a setback as opposed to, death. And that's a topic we cover over on the podcast. Link in the description below. So, with that being said, the only ways to get better is, once again, to continue to play, continue to learn, and gain that experience. And the only way to see the end with your own eyes is, again, to get good and play and win and get through with your own powers. But there's been a shift since the days of the old arcade games and the new arcade games and roguelites, and there's something that really changes things. And that was the advent of the internet. And because of that, the world is infinitely smaller. And with such a small world, you can find tips and tricks for any game that exists out there. So gone are the days where a new game would come out and everyone around your local area at least would struggle for some amount of time, and then the only way to learn was to either figure it out yourself or wait for the bosses around town to figure it out and you learn from them. And you can still do that if you want. There's nothing stopping you from doing that, but it's easier to just look it up on the internet. But roguelites have one advantage, and that is their procedurally generated levels. And because of that, even if there were tips and tricks for them, it usually boils down to getting better at the game or knowing what kind of currency in game is more important, as opposed to ways to actually get you through. Most tips and tricks don't really help get you through in the sense that it's like, oh yeah, if you do this, that, the other, we'll whop them, it'll be easy for you to get out and win. No, it's more so, this is what you should be looking for if you can get it, because at the end of the day, it may not be there. It's more so, if you can get this, this is certainly worth your time, things like that. But you still ultimately just have to get better at the game, master it on your own, and get out there and beat them. That's ultimately what you have to do. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And that is something that I feel like the roguelite has that modern day arcade games don't necessarily get to take advantage of, that makes them the leader in terms of being the natural evolution of the arcade game. For example, if we were to take a game like Crypt of the Necrodancer or Enter the Gungeon and put it in an arcade cabinet, you know, the control schemes of those games are not extraordinarily complex, especially Crypt of the Necrodancer. You don't really need that many buttons. You'd only really need a joystick or D-pad for the movement, however you'd want to handle that. You need a button for the bombs and a button for spells. I think those are really the only things you would need. And if you were to put that in an arcade cabinet, put it at 25 cents a pop with that soundtrack, get some big old speakers on the side, you'd make a mint, or you would have made a mint in the days of coin operated machines. And that's the beauty of it. Games like this could be played over and over again. In Crypt of the Necrodancer specifically, you would be having the different versions of the songs to work with, as well as all of the different levels and characters and play styles that exist just in that game alone. And I haven't even touched on many of the roguelites that came out before and after this one. This one just came out in a good middle point of the time frame we're working with. So that being said, modern day arcade games don't really have that going for them. Even the best of the modern day arcade games, just like the old, have everything to see. There, you'll find everything to see a lot faster unless you're just dealing with a much longer game. But if you're gonna stick with the analogy and moving this back to the coin operated space, you don't want a game that takes forever and a day to play, because you're not going to want to stand there that long. It's just that simple. You don't want to stand there that long unless it's some kind of endless game where the point is to see how long you can go. Then I guess you would want that, but most arcade games don't really have that going on. There is a final level or final boss. There's just a high score, and high score chasing is totally fine. And you can even do that in roguelites as well. There are a lot of roguelites that have a high score mode, or they score your playthrough in some kind of arbitrary fashion. So there's no real way that I can see personally that opens the door for anything to take the crown from the genre of roguelite as the natural successor, because everything from the improvements on the arcade genre itself, the arcadey games of the classic style, the improvements that they have, the roguelite genre take advantage of as well, but they're procedurally generated levels in the way that the story conventions change as far as telling a story within your game, because even arcade games have a story. They usually keep it pretty light just as a setup for the game, but roguelites get to do that as well as do other story stuff based on finishing runs and actually getting to the end, and the fact that getting to the end once in a lot of occasions is not the end. You have to get through the end multiple times to truly see how the thing ends. And that is, again, something we talk about over in the podcast, link in the description below. But all of those things combined give roguelike games such powers that it can hold the crown that the mighty arcade game once held back in the days of our gaming forefathers. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. If you think I'm crazy, you can tell me in the comments below. You think I'm right, you can tell me in the comments below, because I want your takes. And this will not be the end of the 3-Star Lounge YouTube channel. We will be here doing more stuff like this, as well as, list any other things that I can think of that just don't fit over on the podcast. Over on there, again, we do narrative focused things. Right now we're doing a podcast adaptation of Greedfall. We're a couple of episodes in on that, and when we finish that, we have Control coming up. That's information, that's some sneak peek information I haven't even told the podcast only people. That's something that they don't know. You should go over there, listen to the podcast, tell your friends, and then brag on them that you know what the next narrative game will be. And I hope to see you all next time on the 3-Star Lounge. Like, subscribe, share, all that yada yada. You know what you're doing. You've used YouTube before. I don't have to tell you, but I will tell you to feel free to do all those things and to have a great day. Goodbye, my friends.